Do you ever struggle with fear or anxiety? Have you ever noticed how sometimes those thoughts can kind of go through your head and pretty soon it just kind of starts to spiral downward, out of control, and before you know it, you have imagined every worst case scenario known to man? I don't think I'm alone in that kind of thinking. I really try hard not to think that way, but every once in a while, in the middle of the night, anxiety grabs a hold of me and my thoughts spiral out of control. I have realized as I've gotten older that I tend to be a control freak. I'm not proud to say that, but it's really hard for me in situations where I cannot control the outcome, especially in regards to my boys. My oldest one is old enough to have a school permit, and every time he drives away, it's really hard for me. But I have learned to know that he is in God's hands. I'd like to share a story with you that happened 13 years ago. I was sitting in a doctor's office and we had just found out that I had a growth on my ovary the size of a tennis ball. At that point, we did not know if it was cancer or not. The doctor told me that I had to make some decisions within the next week very quickly. If it was cancer, he was recommending that I had everything removed in order to have the best chance against it. He knew that we wanted to have more children, but also at the same time, we needed to think about the one that we had. Our Jacob wasn't even 2 yet. Troy and I decided that if it was cancer, I would have a full hysterectomy. I have to say that the beginning of that week was one of the longest of my life. Some people would say that I experienced the dark night of the soul, and I would agree. I wrestled with God. I was scared, and I think the thing that was hardest for me was that fear just took hold of my mind, and my thoughts spiraled out of control. And I told God, I said, nobody loves Jacob and Troy more than me. My son isn't even 2 years old. He needs his mom. And the most selfish thought that I had was I didn't want anybody taking my place. I didn't want anyone being there for them. I wanted to do it. I was proud to be Troy's wife and to be Jacob's mommy, and I didn't think anybody else could do it as good as me. I wrestled and I wrestled and I read God's word, and finally, I don't even remember exactly what verse it was, but finally I felt a peace wash over me, and I knew that it was going to be okay. I knew the real truth was that God loved Troy and Jacob more than I ever could, and that he loved me, and that he held us all in his most capable hands, and that whatever the outcome of that surgery would be, that it would be okay because we were with him and nothing could take that away from us. Then a few days after that, the pastor came out and he had a special devotion with us and had communion with us, and he shared a special Bible reading with me. It is found in Isaiah 43. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they will not overwhelm you. And when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you, for I am your God. It was a beautiful devotion, and I remember it 13 years later. As I was going into surgery, the doctor noticed that I was quiet, which is not usually the case for me. He asked me if I was okay, and I said that I was, but that I was praying. And I asked them if I could fall asleep instead of counting backwards, if I could just pray. And they said I could. I fell asleep talking to God. It was perfect. When I woke up, they told me the great news that I did not have cancer. But they also shared that I had a very bad case of endometriosis and that we basically had a year in order to have another child. Every month we waited hopeful, and each month we realized we were not pregnant. It had been almost a year, and we were looking at our calendars trying to figure out what adoption agency that we would go and visit. But on Easter morning in 2004, I discovered that I was pregnant. And by Christmas of that year, we held in our arms Matthew Robert. His name, Matthew, means gift from God. The doctor agreed that he was indeed a miracle. I would like to tell you that from that moment on, I never struggled with fear, but I already alluded to the fact, because my son is driving, that I still struggle with it from time to time. I know that God is always with me, and when I struggle with anxiety, what I do is I remind myself that God is holding me, or whoever it is that I'm concerned about, in his most capable hands. And that is the safest place to be. And so I encourage you to do the same. Remember, fear not. You have been redeemed. God knows you by name, and he says to you, you are mine. I have created, well, I didn't, but I had someone create it for me, a special coloring sheet with that verse on it, and I will post the link in the comments below on how you are able to get the coloring sheet. And I just encourage you, no matter where you are at, if you're having a hard time with something, remember, you belong to God. He loves you more than you can possibly imagine. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and if you have any questions, please let me know.